Shalom, shalom. Welcome to Yeshiva Pure K Show Shanim and the Nativ Network. We are dealing with Messianic Prophecies. My name is Dayvaughn Mays. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thank you, Ross. Thank you, Tanisha and Lewis. Thank you, Mr. Dave and Peggy. How y'all doing today? Hope everybody's doing good. The week prior, we did Psalm chapter 22, and I got through half of my slides. It was a pretty long presentation, so we broke it up in two parts. So this will be part two. I'm going to need to share my screen, Mr. Ross, if that's possible.
It should be.
That works. All right. Can you see it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so last week we left off on slide 30. So the last slide we did last week was as it's talking about dogs, comparing them to people. Just a little recap. Psalm 22:16, for dogs have compassed me, the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. So this is the translation that is, most common when we see it. But like I said, I must point out again, we see animals are used to portray the enemies of David. 2 Samuel 16:9. Then said Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, unto the king, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over, I pray thee, and take off his head. So we see somebody cursing the king, and he's compared to a dog. Just like we see in Psalm 22:16, dogs have compassed me. Well, we know this is not literal dogs, and if it was, definitely no dogs are mentioned in the Gospels about encompassing Jesus. So if we get into why this is talking about like a lion, in the Strong's 3738, ka-ari is the same word used in Isaiah 38:13. I have considered until morning like a lion, so he breaks all my bones. From day till night, you make an end of me. So we see this word right here, ka-ari, in the Strong's. This is what it's talking about, like a lion. Ari is a lion, and the kaf part of it is like saying like, when that's in front of the Ari. So in Psalm 7, verse 2, lest he tear my soul like a lion, rending it in pieces while there is none to deliver. What's the word there? Kar ave or kar aria, depending on your pronunciation. But we see we see the same letters there. Psalm 22:16 has the same letters as ka-ari. This one just has a H, a hey at the end of it, because a female lion is called an aria instead of just an ari, because we know we got the feminine and the masculine. Anybody who speaks Hebrew can correct me if I'm wrong on that. So we see the same word in Psalm 7:2. It says like a lion, plain as day. In the Psalms 22:16, it's got the same word. The root word is right there. Psalm 17:12, Aramaic Bible in plain English. They are like a lion, which seeks to tear apart, and like a lion's whelp, which sits in a secret place. Ka'ariya, again, we see the same word there, ka'ari, the same root word without the hay on it at the end. So if the rabbis were trying to conceal something, why is the Psalms having the same word in the same places? And why is the King James translating it like a lion instead of putting pierced in all these other places? We see who is actually telling the truth here, right? Englishman's Concordance, Strong's Hebrew 3738, kara has got 17 occurrences. So what the excuse is they say, well, kara means to dig or to open up something. So in Psalm 22:16, it's got an olive there. And right here in kara, there's no olive. Right here, ka'ari, there's an olive in there. So you can't use that to try to justify kara when it doesn't have an olive like it actually does in the translation right there. So ka'ari, Numbers 24:9, he lies down like a lion or as a lion. Isaiah 38:13, like a lion. Ezekiel 22:25, like a roaring lion. Psalm 22:16, all of a sudden that turns into they pierced my hands and feet. No, it doesn't say pierced. It says ka'ari, like it does in all these other places. That's clearly being deceptive right there. So we see ka'ari mean what ka'ari means and how the word lion is in Psalm 22. And it's in there more than once to describe enemies of David in context, as well as dogs and bulls. The Masoretic text keeps to the existing context and has no need to deceive with wordplay. So what is the word for pierce in Hebrew? Job 30:17, my bones are pierced in me in the night season, and my sinews take no rest. 53:65, if they wanted to say pierce, they could have used the word in the car right here, 53:65 in the Strongs. It means to dig, pick out, pierce, put, thrust out. A primitive root to bore, penetrate, quarry, dig, pick out, pierce, put, thrust out. They clearly could have picked another word right there, but that's not what it says in Psalm 22:16. So we got the lion part dealt with. What about Psalm 22:18? They part my garments among them and cast lots upon my vesture. These garments were either royal or military apparel worn by Israelites. 4:55 in the Strongs, mad or med is the word in 1 Samuel 18:4. It says to David with his armor in the New American Standard. In the King James Version, it just says the word garments. Excuse me. But it's talking about his battle gear. 2 Samuel 20:8 was dressed in his military attire. The New International Version says, while they were at the great rock in Gibeon, Amasa came to meet them. Joab was wearing his military tunic, and strapped over at his waist was a belt with a dagger in its sheath, and he stepped forward. It dropped out of his sheath. So when David is talking about their parting, they want to part my garments. They want to take his military gear. Jesus didn't wear no military gear or something that the king would wear on a normal basis. Now, what's interesting is that they did dress him up in royal garb, right? And when you would go to, and I'm gonna get to that. But the New Living Translation says they arrived at the great stone of Gibeon and Amasa met him. Joab was wearing his military tunic. In the English version, it says Joab was wearing a soldier's garment. In the Berean Study Bible, it says he was dressed in military attire. And in the book of Job 41:13, it talks about his outer armor. So if we're talking about armor here, as David was a warrior, chances are he wasn't on the battlefield in his royal apparel, because like I said, it can be translated as either royal or military. But if David's on the battlefield talking about they're trying to take stuff from him, they wouldn't be trying to take off his royal clothes. He would be wearing his battle armor. That's why they're talking about taking David's clothing. So did they take anybody else's clothes? So before they smote Jesus, they beat him up and dressed him up. Luke 23:11, it says, and Herod with his men of war, set him at naught and mocked him and arrayed him in a gorgeous robe and sent him again to Pilate. So he was arrayed in a gorgeous robe. So the Christians say, see, that's the royal garb that they wanted from him. Well, they was mocking him. They was making fun of him when they did this. But again, at the same time, it's kind of odd that they would even be wanting this, because if he was all beat up and bloody, why would you want to take some beat up and bloody garments off of somebody? If he was, the way he's described in the pictures, would you really want some bloody clothes like that? It just seems kind of, I'm not sure why they would want to do that, but let's say they did, right? Let's give it to him. So they mocked him. This is why they wanted his clothes. They were gorgeous. Everyone would be stripped of gorgeous garments at death by the Romans, right? Because purple signified royalty. We see this in Lamentations 4:5. Those who at once ate delicacies are destitute in the streets. Those brought up in royal purple now lie on ash heaps. So it would make sense that they would want to take these, precious garments of his if he was really dressed up like it says in the New Testament, right? Daniel 5:29. Then at Belteshazzar's command, Daniel was clothed in purple. A gold chain was placed around his neck, and he was proclaimed the third highest ruler in the kingdom. In the book of Revelations, chapter 18, it says, and cry out, woe to you, great city, dressed in fine linen and purple and scarlet, and glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. Mark 15:17. They put a purple robe on him, then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on him. Luke 16:19. There was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen and lived in luxury every day. So I'm trying to give, I'm trying to be honest and be fair to show he was dressed in something that they would have wanted to take off of him, but it wasn't battle clothing like David is describing about them casting lots, because David wouldn't have been on the battlefield with his royal gear. He would have had on his battle gear or his outer armor, is what David would have been talking about in the Psalms. So casting lots for spoil. So what is being said is they who hate David are saying, when he dies, I want his crown, I want his throne, I want his ephod, I want his battle armor, etc. They shot dice to decide the outcomes, right? The psalmist is speaking of the king's clothing that was probably highly coveted material. Psalm 45:7-8. You have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Therefore, God, your God, has anointed you with the oil of gladness beyond your companions. Your robes are all fragrant with myrrh and aloes and cassia. So your robes. So we know David did have royal clothing, but again, would he be wearing such things on the battlefield? No. Coveting, 2 Samuel 15:6. So the reason I'm bringing all this up is because everybody would be stripped of anything of value at execution. So this does not make it exclusive to Jesus. 2 Samuel 15:6. Absalom behaved in this way to all the Israelites who came to ask to the king asking for justice. So he stole the hearts of the people of Israel, right? Why is this important? So Absalom completely coveted the throne, as did Adonijah. 1 Kings 1:5. Now Adonijah, whose mother was Haggith, put himself forward and said, I will be king. So he got chariots and horses ready with 50 men to run ahead of him. So everybody was coveting David's throne. And of course, when David was going to die, they would definitely wanted to have stripped him of his clothing because they already wanted his throne, right? And these are his sons. These are not just anybody. These are his sons. So let's talk more about this being somebody being stripped of their clothing, right? Acts 5:34-37. Then one in the council stood up, a Pharisee named Gamaliel, a teacher of the law, held in respect by all the people, and commanded them to put the apostles outside for a little while. And he said to them, men of Israel, take heed to yourself what you intend to do regarding these men. For some time ago, Theudas rose up claiming to be somebody. A number of men, about 400, joined him. He was slain, and all who obeyed him were scattered and came to nothing. So if he was slain, do you think they took his clothing? Pretty sure, right? After this man, Judas of Galilee, rose up in the days of the census and drew away many people after him. He also perished, and all who obeyed him were dispersed. Pretty likely that they took his clothing when they killed and executed him too, because this is what the Romans did. When these people were slain by the Romans, can you assume their clothes were not taken from them along with the weapons they used as souvenirs to those that killed them, like David took Goliath's sword? Even David did this. He cut off the Goliath's head and he took his sword. If he could have fit his clothes, he probably would have took his clothes too, because that just would have been another trophy of, taking something from somebody who was trying to kill you, especially in battle. That's what they did. Luke 10:30. Jesus answered and said, a certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves, which stripped him of his raiment and wounded him and departed, leaving him half dead. So this was just a common practice, even out of the mouth of Jesus. People would strip you of your clothes if they could, leaving the man half dead. They took all his clothes off of him. So this was not like an exclusive thing that, oh, they took Jesus's clothes, a fulfillment of prophecy. Come on, whose clothes didn't they take, right? This is in the New Testament. He leadeth princes away to spoil, Job 1:19. He leadeth princes away to spoil and overthroweth the mighty. So if you're despoiled, that means your stuff is taken from you. Genesis 34:27. The sons of Jacob came upon the dead bodies and looted the city where their sister had been defiled. If they came upon the dead bodies, what you think they did? They went in their pockets and they took whatever was valuable and probably stripped them people of their clothing too, right? Deuteronomy 28:29. And thou shalt grope at noonday as the blind gropeth in darkness. And thou shalt not prosper in thy ways, and thou shalt be openly oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee. So if you're spoiled, that means people take all your things, right? All your stuff. 1 Samuel 27:9. Whenever David attacked an area, he did not leave a man or woman alive, but took sheep and cattle, donkeys and camels, and clothes. Then he returned to Achish. This is just what people do back in the day. They would take all your clothes. They would take whatever you had that was of value. So stripping somebody of their garments at execution would not be exclusive to Jesus. He wasn't the first person it happened to or the last. Those two thieves that were up there, if they was in some stolen clothes, guess what? If they were of value, they would have got their stuff taken off too. So casting lots for spoil. 2 Kings 21:14. I will forsake the remnant of my inheritance and give them into the hands of their enemies. They will be looted and plundered by all their enemies. So this goes across the board by everybody who falls into the hands of their enemies. Isaiah 42:22. But this is a people plundered and looted, all of them trapped in pits or hidden away in prisons. They have become plunder with no one to rescue them. They have been made loot with no one to say, send them back. Amos 3:10. They do not know how to do right, declares the Lord, who store up in their fortresses what they have plundered and looted. So measure for measure. You out here plundering and looting people, guess what's going to happen to you? Being plundered and looted. Psalm 22:20. So you see, when you go through the whole chapter and you're able to compare the Tanakh with these verses and not just cherry pick Psalm 22:16 or Psalm 22:1, it all becomes very clear what's going on. Excuse me. Psalm 22:20. Rescue my life from the sword, my only life from the power of the dogs. So again, we're talking about these dogs, and rescue my life from the sword. Well, Jesus was not rescued from the sword, was he? No, that's not how they killed him. That's how they checked to see if he was dead. They stabbed him, but I think it was with a javelin or something. It wasn't actually a sword. I think it was like a spear. Psalm 144:10. Who gives victories to kings, who rescues David, his servant, from the cruel sword. So isn't it interesting that David in Psalm 22:20 is saying, rescue my life from the sword? And we have a verse in Psalm 144:10 that says who is being rescued by name from what? A sword. Who gives victory to kings, who rescues David, his servant, from the cruel sword. 1 Samuel 17:45. David said to the Philistine, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. So when was Jesus saved from the sword? And again, dogs are being used in Psalm 22:20 to refer to enemies, just like those lions, right? In context. Psalm 22:1. Save me from the who? Lion's mouth. So in context, how many times do we see lions even mentioned in Psalm 22? So to try to claim that the rabbis just tried to secretly hide it, or the Masoretic text changed it because it really said pierced and it really said, a different word there, and it didn't say like a lion, doesn't make any sense. So like a lion, they pinned my hands and my feet makes sense when he says later in the same chapter, save me from the lion's mouth. If they got him pinned down, then they trying to eat him or kill him, right? Psalm 54:7. My soul is in the midst of lions. I lie down amid fiery beasts, the children of men, the children of man. So these are not literal lions, it's just figurative. Whose teeth are spears and arrows, whose tongues are sharp swords. Same language. Lions. Psalm 22:21. Save me from the lion's mouth. What's the word? Aria. Again, without the cough in front of it. It's a cough or the kuf. I'm sorry, whichever one that is in Hebrew. I'm not a linguist, so don't hold me to that. But it's definitely the Hebrew letter that signifies like is not in front of the word lion right there, but it definitely says lion. Save me from the lion's mouth right there in the Hebrew. You can't ignore that. Look at that same word right there and compare it to Psalm 22:16. The Christians can't deny this. It's in the translation. It's in the KJV. It's in the NAS and in the Hebrew. Lion. Everybody agrees that word says lion. So why in Psalm 22:16 doesn't it mean lion? Because they're trying to paint Jesus into the scenario. Lions and unicorns. Psalm 22 and Psalm 35 have the same language about lions. Psalm 35:17. From their ravages, my only life from the lions, right? He's talking about save me from the lions. From the NAS says, from their ravages, my only life from the lions. The KJV says, from their destructions, my darling from the lions. My life, my darling, basically my precious life. Psalm 22 and 21 says, save me from the lion's mouth, for thou hast heard me from the horns of the unicorns. Now we know this is not talking about the horse, it's just talking about like a rhinoceros or any animal that had one horn. There's a two-horn rhinoceros, there's a one-horn rhinoceros. This would be the unicorn. And in the ancient world, there was probably other animals before we started killing stuff and making stuff extinct that he could have been referring to. But the point is, again, the word lion is used to describe the enemies of David, and then the unicorn or the one-horn rhino or unicorn rhino. And we know there is a two-horn rhino as well, like I said before. So long story short, save me from the lion's mouth, and you have delivered me from the horns of the unicorns. Psalm 35:17, save my darling from their destructions and from the lions. So it's got the same language is being described to say, basically, save me from these people who are trying to kill me. And they're described as animals, metaphorically speaking about people. Psalm 22 and 22, same thing. I will declare thy name unto the brethren. In the midst of the congregation will I praise thee. Psalm 35 and 18, I will give thanks in the great congregation. I will praise thee amongst much people. So we even see Psalm 22 is talking about is the same language is being used in other chapters of Psalm with the same type of context. He's talking about being saved from lions in Psalm 35. He's talking about praising God. These can't be about Jesus and David when nobody claims Jesus is in Psalm 35:18, at least not that I'm aware of. So, but they will say, well, Psalm 22 is talking about Jesus. Well, David speaking of himself in the same language is used in Psalm 35:18. Why don't nobody try to put Jesus in Psalm 35:18? This is basically, the Psalms have the same kind of tone, these two different Psalms. Vows, Psalm 22 and 25. My praise shall be of thee in the great congregation. I will pay my vows before them that fear him. Psalm 56 and 12. Thy vows are upon me, O God. I will render praises unto thee. So we see David, who was the sweet psalmist of Israel, talking about vows. Even other people talk about vows, but because David was the only one to write Psalms. But Psalm 61 and 5. For thou, O God, has heard my vows. Thou hast given me the heritage of those that fear thy name. Now we know David was given the heritage, right? He was given he took over the city of David, which is Jerusalem, Zion, right? He took that from the one of the 7 Canaanite nations. Psalm 61 and 8. So will I sing praise unto thy name forever, that I may daily perform my vows. What does Jesus say about vows? Because Psalm 22 and 25 clearly says, I will pay my vows before them that fear him. Psalm 132, 1 through 2, a song of decrees. Lord, remember David and all his afflictions, how he sware unto the Lord and bowed unto the mighty God of Jacob. But Jesus said in Matthew 5 and 34, but I tell you, do not swear an oath at all. Don't take no vows, because to swear is to, make a vow, either by heaven, for it is God's throne. James 5 and 12, but above all things, my brothers, swear not, neither by heaven, neither by earth, neither by any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no mean no, lest you fall into condemnation. But David in Psalm 22 and in Psalm 132 clearly says he's swearing and he's making vows. Why would Jesus and James say don't do that, but David's doing it? How he swore unto the Lord and vowed unto the mighty God of Jacob. So if David's doing this and David's a Messiah, why would a so-called Messiah come along and him and his brother, because James is the brother of Jesus, tell you don't swear? That's opposite, right? What's going on? So clearly they're not putting Jesus in to somebody who's making vows in Psalm 22, right? Because he said, don't do that. So if Jesus is in Psalm 22, he's not the one to say, I will pay my vows, because right here he's saying, don't swear to God. Don't swear an oath at all. Do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne. So don't even do it. James says, swear not, neither by heaven, neither by earth, neither by any other oath. Don't do that. So clearly, Psalm 22 and 25 can't be about Jesus. Oops, I went too far back. Because Matthew 5:34 and James 5:12 says, don't be doing that, right? Psalm 22 and 28. For dominion belongs to the Lord, and he rules over the nations. Dominion belongs to the Lord. Matthew 28 and 18 says, and Jesus came and spake to them, saying, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Given? Who gives God anything? So you can't be God if somebody had to give you authority, right? That doesn't make any sense. If you got to be given something, you're probably not God. Nobody gives him anything. Even David says, the things that I give to you like tithes, you already gave to me to give to you. So I really can't even give you nothing, right? If I'm giving a tithe of my money, my grain, my mint, my dill, cumin, whatever I'm trying to give to God, he already gave it to me, and I'm just giving it back. So for Jesus to say all authority has been given to me, well, you must not be God to be having something given to you. And that's not what Psalm 22 and 28 says. For dominion belongs to the Lord, and he rules over the nation. So Jesus never did such things. He claimed to have authority, but he didn't show any authority, right? So this claim by Jesus is a serious contradiction to what the prophets have laid down. Deuteronomy 33 and 26. There is none like God, O Jeshurun, who rises to the heavens to your help through the skies in his majesty. There is none like God. So he wouldn't be giving his dominion to anybody, period, because there's nobody like him. Deuteronomy 4 and 2, you shall not add to the word that I command you, nor take from it, that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God that I command you. Isaiah 48 and 11, for my own sake, I will do it. For how should my name be profaned, and I will not give my glory to another. Isaiah 26 and 13, Lord our God, other lords besides you have ruled over us, but your name alone do we honor. Psalm 66 and 4, all the earth shall worship thee and shall sing unto thee. They shall sing to thy name, Selah. Thy name, not nobody else's name. So he's not giving his glory to nobody else. One Lord. Psalm 81 and 9, there shall no strange God be in thee, neither shalt thou worship any strange God. Psalm 86 and 9, all nations whom thou hast made shall come and worship before thee, O Lord, and shall glorify thy name. Zechariah 14 and 9, and the Lord shall be king over the earth, and in that day there shall be one Lord, and his name one. Isaiah 2 and 11, the lofty looks of man shall be humble, and the haughtiness of men shall be bowed down. The Lord alone shall be exalted in that day. So why am I stressing on this? Because if we go back to the Psalm 22 and 28, it says dominion belongs to the Lord, and he rules over the nations. Right. So if dominion belongs to God and he rules over the nations, we're only going to give him praise and honor because it only belongs to him. He's the only one who's going to be exalted in that day. His name shall be one, not three. It doesn't say his name shall be Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. It does not say that. No equals. Isaiah 40 and 25, to whom then will you liken me, or shall I be equal, saith the Holy One? Who? Isaiah 46 and 5, to whom will you liken me and make me equal and compare me that we may be alike? Who? 1 Samuel 2 and 2, there is none holy like the Lord, for there is none beside you. There is no rock like our God. If you want to take that literal, he don't have nobody at his right hand, literally besides him. There is none beside you. There's nobody else, and there's nobody beside you. None. Who when you liken me? Who should I be equal to? 2 Samuel 7:22, for therefore you are great, O Lord God, for there is none like you, and there is no God besides you, according to all that we have heard with our ears. Excuse me. According to all that we have heard with our ears. Now, what are they talking about? What is he talking about? In Deuteronomy, doesn't it say, after the commandments was given on Sinai, you saw no form. Don't corrupt yourself and make images of a male. Deuteronomy chapter 4. You only heard a voice. There was no strange God with me. Read Deuteronomy. It tells you all these things. Psalm 86:8. There is none like you among the gods, O Lord, nor are there any works like yours. Jeremiah 10:6. There is none like you, O Lord. You are great, and your name is great in might. There is none like you. I've been said this like a lot of times so far. Nobody's like the Most High. So only he has dominion, and only he is the one. He's the only one that we give glory and praises to. Summary. In Psalm 22, it's clearly talking about David, but of course the Christians say, nope, that's talking about Jesus. It's when he says, my God was, why have you forsaken me? Let's talk about that. So was Jesus forsaken? If the answer is yes, he was forsaken, well, that's a punishment. That means you did something wrong, which is called a sin. And if he wasn't forsaken, he lied. So did the Most High respond and save him when he even said that? Why have you forsaken me? The answer is no, he was executed. Acts 10:39. Why is Jesus asking God why he forsaken him if he was supposed to come and die anyway? Doesn't even make sense. But Acts 10:39, and we are witnesses of all that he did, both in the country of the Jews and in Jerusalem. They put him to death by hanging him on a tree. Matthew 26:27-46. And about the ninth hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Who is my God if you're God? Who is your God if you are God? Shouldn't he say, myself, why have I forsaken me? Why have I forsaken me? That should be the language, right? If he's God. Myself, why have I forsaken me? Think about that, y'all. So one of the interesting things about him crying on the cross, right? Because it says he cried with a loud voice. That could just mean he screamed or was being real loud, right? He cried with a loud voice. So we know that the New Testament is full of false fulfillment citations, just like Psalm 22 and the book of John and whoever else in the Gospels try to claim Jesus fulfilled a prophecy. They take verses out of context and paint Jesus into them. So it says he was crying, he was forsaken and arguing with the Israelites in all the Gospels, right? Well, that's not what Isaiah says will happen. So we got a few problems here. We have Jesus crying out, but guess what? He ain't supposed to do this. Matthew 12:16-21. It says, and charge them that they should not make him known, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, behold, my servant whom I have chosen, my beloved, in whom my soul is well pleased. I will put my spirit upon him, and he shall show judgment to the Gentiles. He shall not strive nor cry, neither shall any man hear his voice in the streets. Well, we know at first Jesus said, don't even go to the Gentiles. So they changed that up, right? A bruised reed shall he not break, and smoking flax shall he not quench, till he send for the judgment unto victory, and his name shall the Gentiles trust. Matthew is a liar and changes the prophecy found in Isaiah, and I'm going to show you how he took this verse, this whole from verse 18-21, all this right here, and just I'm going to show you, because Isaiah 42:1-4 is where this comes from. Matthew changes the text clearly. Behold, my servant, whom I uphold, mine elect, in whom my soul delighteth. I have put my spirit upon him. He shall bring forth judgment to the Gentiles. He shall not cry, nor lift up, nor cause his voice to be heard in the street. Well, that right there tells you a problem, right? It says Jesus cried out with a loud voice, talking about, my God, why have you forsaken me? So it says he shall not cry, nor lift up, nor cause his voice to be heard in the street. So people heard him crying on the cross. So that already is a problem. A bruised reed shall he not break, and the smoking flax shall he not quench. He shall bring forth judgment unto truth. He shall not fail, nor be discouraged. Jesus is supposed to return, which means he failed at his first attempt. Nor be discouraged. If you're talking about why have you forsaken me and saying, take this cup away from me, I don't want to do it, you're discouraged. Till he have set judgment in the earth. Well, he wasn't a judge because he said, I didn't come to judge, right? Then it says, the isle shall wait for his law. What does Matthew do? Matthew says, and in his name shall the Gentiles trust. That's not what Isaiah says. So again, if we start with behold my servant in Isaiah 42, verse 1, Matthew 12 and 18 starts off, behold my servant, whom I uphold, whom I have chosen, mine elect, my beloved, in whom my soul is well pleased, in whom my soul delighteth, right? I put my spirit on him. I will put my spirit on him. He shall show judgment to the nations. He shall bring forth judgment to the Gentiles, which is the nations. Okay. He shall not strive nor cry, neither shall any man hear his voice in the streets. He shall not cry nor lift up nor cause his voice to be heard in the street. That's the same. A bruised reed shall not break, and smoking flax shall not quench. A bruised reed shall he not break, and the smoking flax shall not quench. And he shall bring forth judgment unto truth, till he send forth judgment unto victory. I'll give you that one. But this last part, and the isle shall wait for his law. They say in Matthew, in his name shall the Gentiles trust. Come on. And in his name shall the Gentiles trust. They completely painted Jesus into that last part. That's completely, that's deceitful. That's not what it says in Isaiah. So don't say this was spoken by the prophet, right? You can't say that. You can't say that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet or Isaiah the prophet, and then you change this whole part right here that the prophet didn't say. You ignore, he shall not cry out or strive. Strive means to like have conflict with people, right? Oops, I didn't mean to do that. So if you got conflict with people, he arguing with people, right? That's striving. Having conflict is going around. He accusing people of stuff. He's arguing with the scribes and the Pharisees, crying out. He's asking God to take away his problems, right? But right here, it says he shall not fail or be discouraged. Well, if you're crying that God take away this cup to where you got like blood coming out instead of sweat, you keep praying that you take away this cup from me. You crying, why have you forsaken me? You're discouraged. Then it said he shall not fail. Why you got to come back if you didn't fail? So with that being said, I'm going to, if I can unshare my screen, I'm going to stop sharing and we can open it up for questions and comments and whatever anybody want to say. The floor is open.